Navarro, Chair of the School Board Finance Committee.
Justin Costa, City Councilor and member of the Finance Committee.
Emily Figdor, School Board, member of the Finance Committee.
Tim Atkinson, School Board, member of the Finance Committee.
Sarah Thompson, School Board at Large, and not a member of the Finance Committee.
Javier Latana, Superintendent of Schools.
Alicia Gardner, Director of Budget and Finance for the schools.
Brendan O'Connell, the city's finance director.
Jill Duzon, at-large counselor, not a member of the Finance Committee.
Ethan Sterling, Mayor, member of City Finance Committee.
Brad, we'd everybody introduce themselves. Stephen, you know the routine.
Durham resident.
Public Schools. Liz Love, the Assistant Director of Portlandville Education.
John Thibodeau, Protector of Neighborhood Schools.
Kate Snyder, Foundation for Portland Public Schools.
Thank you.
This is my daughter, Moxie.
Thanks for coming.
Excited for the baseball game. Thank you for accommodating me taking off early.
This is a joint meeting for those that are listening on Facebook or in the audience, or part of the meeting can be joint. You're all welcome to stay for the other items, but I don't think you want to. This item is discussion about the budget. Anna, are you taking the lead, or Javier?
I'm going to turn it over to Javier and Alicia. I think they have the answers to questions from last time in a brief presentation.
Yeah, and that's what we're focused on today. We took notes on all of the questions that were raised at the last Finance Committee, and our agenda is to walk through the answers to those today, and then if there are any new ones to answer those. So Alicia is going to project, and we do have paper.
Can we hand those on?
Oh, geez, great.
Well, you get back to channel 1 from 131.
All right, sorry, guys.
Nice and warm, too.
Yeah, right? That's what it is.
One for me. Everyone have one over there?
Alicia.
I know. Go ahead, let me know. No? Okay, sorry guys.
There you go, John's on that. Screen share.
No, that's not it. Maybe?
No, that's not it.
All right. I'm not gonna do that right now. Actually, can I use an HDMI? Okay. Everyone has a paper document in front of them, so we'll just work off that for now. And I have extras if there are people in the audience that want to do that.
Yeah, I gave it to you.
Apologize everyone for touching things. That's what I get. I can connect to HDMI, but that's an option. Oh, jeez. I'll figure it out later. Okay. So the first set of questions here says document the increase in benefits attributable to the investment. So that was from Councilor Cook that had asked that question. So this just outlines for our 3 major investments, the brief program, the pre-K staffing, and the core instruction, the breakout between salary and benefits. You can see the percentage shifts a little bit. Benefits make up a higher percentage of the Breathe program because there are so many ed techs, and proportionately their benefits are a higher percentage than that if it was a teacher or something along those lines. So the pre-K, so just to remind everyone, the Breathe salary, sorry, Brendan. So there's 1 lead social worker, 5 regular social workers, 2 teachers, and then 23 BHPs.
Alicia, does everyone know what BREATHE stands for?
Yes, I think so. We did.
Okay.
We went over it.
I just didn't know.
I mean, you're welcome to, though.
Christy is going to be joining us. She was coming from your other K-12 meeting, so if we have any questions at the end about the program, she'll be here to talk about that. And then pre-K, there are 5 teachers, 5 ed techs. It doesn't appear to be Chromecasting. I'm Chromecasting, it's just not opening on the thing. So, I think
It's an awfully cute dog.
that's all the, there's an HDMI word over here. There's Chromecasting, sorry guys.
I'm going over overhead projectors.
I know, there is one. Yay, Brendan! He wins. Okay, so that was really the extent of the question. Is everyone kind of okay with that summary? Sorry, I skipped the core instruction. That's just half a person, so that's why the numbers are low. So the questions relating to breathe. So the questions really were about how many BHPs do we currently have, and then how many will be replaced as a result of the 23 BHPs. And Malia worked on a memo, so that starts on page 3 of this document. It's fairly lengthy, so I don't know if you want to go through this in detail, but just to kind of call out exactly the answers to these questions, on page 2 of that document, it says that we currently have 52 BHPs working with students in our schools provided by outside agencies. These agencies are Connections for Kids, CASA, and Woodford's. In the Breathe plan, we intend to add 23 BHPs, which would be our employees. Specifically, as of right now, the ones that they know that we can offset, of those 52, there are 8. There will still be kids not sort of in the Breathe program that will need one-on-one services that will be provided by these outside agencies. But immediately we know the kids that specifically would qualify for this program, we would be able to have 8 of those go away. You want to say any more about that, or?
Just, I think it's important to understand 2 things about that, 3 things. One is that this is designed to increase the intensity of supports for students, so that's why there is a large number of staff necessary to be able to do that. 2, that there will always be students who are not in the Breathe program yet, so their IEP has not said that that's the level of support that they need, who are getting interventions through BHP, so there will always be BHPs working with kids with emotional disturbance that are, before the kids are actually identified and go into the BHP. When that happens, in most cases, those kids would jettison that BHP and they would be in the more intensive Breathe program. And then the third thing is that we also have BHPs that work with kids that have, physical, there are other health impaired, ADHD, autism, things along those lines, who are not candidates for the Breathe program, so that's why you don't see a one-to-one, 52 BHPs go away, replaced by the 23 BHPs that are funded through the program.
And Malia and Christy also put together a nice sort of chart explaining how the programs will be staffed, how many students that those will be serving. So I just wanted to call out the very last kind of square in the bottom that shows comparison of what we serve now and what we will be serving. So it's a net increase of 37 students, and I haven't had time to do this, we actually just discussed this morning, but when we come back to present to the council, we'll have costs broken out to explain to you how much our current day treatment costs per student, how much this new level of Breathe will cost per student, and then something that we don't really talk about here is if we didn't have the current iteration of Bayside and if we didn't do Breathe, what would it cost us to send these kids out of the district, which could be upwards of $60,000 per student. So we're going to sort of highlight that for you going forward as sort of a continuum of cost
to go with
along with the
continuing
care.
services.
So that'll be something we'll bring back to the city council when we present. Okay, so The next question was just about showing the tax needs with and without investments in a little bit more clear of a fashion. So this separates sort of the budget with and without investments. So with investments, the mill rate would be for us $11.75, which is up a penny from when we were here last time. The Finance Committee voted to add an ed tech at Peaks End. I believe we talked about this with this group last week about so that we can continue on with the pre-K class at Peaks as it is working now. And even though it's only $39,000, rounding got us and it pushed us over the edge. So it did end up being $11.75 in total. So without investments, which is the $2.6 million of costs and about $850,000 in revenue, the mill rate would be $11.52 or a tax increase of 38 cents. So this just kind of separates those two things. All right. The next section is questions relating to pre-K. So the first question had asked us about outlining the expansion options. So this document is something that we had provided to the board, and we actually added a level. So for those of you that followed this process, we presented 3 options to the board. So the first pathway option was everyone would be.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah.
So the board considered 3 options. The first one was where we would continue our current programming, so that would be 3 partner sites, and scale up 9 additional classrooms over the next 5 years, and have those classrooms be like the existing 5 that we have that are district staff, sort of Portland Public Schools employees, and all of the benefits and so on that go with that. And so that was the first. That was the first option. It costs $1.4 million. That includes the 2 additional classrooms and the additional supports necessary.
Think about that. So this is sort of our maximum financial exposure. So this is current pre-K investment that we're already making, plus the 2 new classrooms, plus sort of the services that we weren't providing before. So a pre-K coordinator, half of sort of administrative support for that person, ELL staffing, and this also assumes 100% of before and after care, so every student attends and no one pays. So it's like sort of our maximum exposure. This is not necessarily reflective of what's in the budget. So the budget is not an increase of 1.4 as we talked about. So I just wanted to talk about the discrepancy between those 2 things, so go ahead.
So then the second pathway that was considered was one where the, depending on locations, that there would be a combination of Portland Public Schools, additional classrooms, and classrooms in community partners. So that's basically expanding using the current model. Again, same number of students served. The only difference would be some of the staff would be Portland Public School staff, some of the staff would be community partner staff, and so that was the dividing in the location would also be potentially different. And then the third option was where the entire expansion was in essence outsourced to the Opportunity Alliance, and they would run the district's pre-K program side by side with their Head Start program. So it would leverage what they already do, the resources that they bring to the table to be able to do that. The staff would not be Portland Public School staff. It would be TOA staff. So those were the 3 options that the board considered, that we presented to them to start with. The board actually wound up with a, it's in essence a combination of 1 and 2. where they voted to actually increase the same number of student seats, and but we would stop having the partnership staff. The partnership staff, they would be Portland Public School staff, located within the partnership sites. So that's the main change to that. And so you can see there what the benefits were for each of those. There wasn't a significant difference between 1, 2, and where we wound up in terms of the areas where the barriers to participation were impacted. The first area is wraparound services. That means access to, in-center daycare and social service coordination, health, connections to healthcare providers and things along those lines. The length of the school day it was identified as one of the barriers to our current programming, and so that is solved in all of these options by providing the before and after care that Alicia referenced to. We do not have a solution yet to transportation. The first step in that direction is that we will be able to provide metro passes to any family that could benefit from being able to get their students to the pre-K program through that. And we are looking at how we would be able to, as we continue to scale up, do transportation through the school district. And then the last one is being able to have the proper services to enroll students. So it's going through our current intake center, making sure that we also have the types of ESL supports and things along those lines that are necessary for our students. So that's the analysis that we prepared for the board, and we sort of modified that because we think that it's responsive to the questions that the finance committee asked about this.
So the next two questions are related to alternate funding sources for the pre-K options. So there is a pre-K revenue options attachment. I will just kind of let these stand alone and you can read them. The second page of this is sort of how other groups are funding their local pre-K programs right now. And then the second attachment is a memo from Portland Connect Ed explaining sort of what their role is in this process.
And also articulating the fact that they are convening a funding task force to look at ways in which we can support our pre-kindergarten expansion into the future without it being part of the district's budget. So I think that is something I've requested from the mayor, that there be somebody appointed from the council to be on that. Mike Bork and I are co-chairing that revenue committee that will start meeting shortly to look at different ways in which we can fund pre-K. And again, that the first handout that Alicia shared, that gives you examples of how other communities are funding this type of universal access to high-quality pre-kindergarten through a variety of sources, not just taxes.
Okay. The next question I believe was from Mayor Strimling, asking about comps. So I'm not going to go through these. I just want to let you know that they're in there. So there are per pupil spending comps, budget increase comps, and then the tax rate comps that you had requested. So those are in the packet. And then the next section is about Portland Adult Ed, so I'll let you speak to this.
So
there's a memo in there.
these questions came mostly from Councilor Cook, and I did talk to Councilor Cook today, and I She said that she wouldn't be here today, but she is interested in this, and so I said I'd make sure that she gets it. The first question was about our wait lists at Portland Adult Ed, and so you can see that we do have a wait list. There are 37 students currently on the wait list. It was 56 a year ago, so it's about a third of our, a third fewer students that are on waiting lists this year. And then it goes on to outline why we think that we have gotten better, as well as some of the challenges that continue to be there. I think that you had asked for a memo that explained this, so that's what we tried to do, is to sort of not just tell you the sort of the hard facts, but also what we've done that has, that has made a difference, as well as some of the challenges that we continue to have in doing that. We also had a question about the non-Portland residents, and so we have, again, there a breakdown of the number of students who are not Portland residents, and a breakdown of where they come from. And so I'm not going to read the memo for you. If you have any questions, of course, we'll be happy to ask. We also were asked about whether we've engaged in conversations with neighboring communities about paying a portion of, paying tuition or something for the students from other communities that are in our adult ed programs. And so this is a fairly long answer to that question, and sort of the straightforward answer is no, we have not had those conversations. And then it goes on to explain some of the intricacies around, our obligation to provide the services free of charge, so we can't charge people. We can, for example, prioritize Portland residents over Westbrook residents or South Portland residents in terms of access to services. But I think it tries to explain that we do get reimbursement from the state for the services that we provide, not 100%, but a percentage. And obviously, if we didn't serve those students, we wouldn't get that. Reimbursement from the state. And then it also has a paragraph talking about the fact that the state has moved towards a sort of county level hub. So, the 10 districts in Cumberland County are now a part of that hub, and that we feel good about that direction, and that it has helped to leverage additional resources that we've previously not been able to access in Portland Adult Ed, and sort of gives the example of the family literacy program where we were capped at 100,000, but going through the hub, we expect to receive 150,000, and a little bit more than that because it includes some administrative costs. So, we feel that while we've not had those specific conversations with communities, there's good reasons why we haven't had them, and we do think that we're moving in the right direction. The other thing that I think it's important to point out, sort of going back to the reduction in the number of people from outside of Portland that are in the adult ed program, is that, for example, Westbrook has really upped their game. They hired our retired ESL chair, and they've helped them to really make their program more robust, and so they now have like 100 students in their adult education program, which is part of the explanation for why we have fewer students on waiting lists, and also why we have more, a higher percentage of the students are our students. And then the last question was about if we were consulting for South Portland and Westbrook, and we're not, but as I mentioned, our retired ESOL chair is now heading up the Westbrook program.
Okay. And the last two sections were around sort of shared costs between both organizations. So I just wanted to just give you a heads up that that's not finished yet. But our facilities coordinator did give me the square footage and broke it down between sort of city space, school space, shared space, so that's attached here for you to review, and then as we sort of move forward with this, we will let you know what's going on.
And when you say move forward, you're talking about discussions with
Any discussions going forward, yes.
with
So-
Brendan and you and whoever else.
Right, so I sent all of this to Brendan and said, we'll talk about this in the future. I hear you guys have something going on Monday, so he didn't really have time to talk about it today. So that was all of our questions from last time we got together. And I did want to mention, Christine Warren is here. She's our director of Bayside, and Elizabeth Love is here from Portland Adult Ed if you have any additional questions that they can answer for you.
Elizabeth's already been here this week.
She just sleeps in this room.
So are there additional questions on the material?
But anyway,
Go ahead, you're the only one.
All right.
Thanks so far.
Thank you. This is very helpful. On the BREATHE program, as we talked a little bit about last time, we got feedback from the teachers that there just weren't a lot of social workers, and I'm still sort of trying to just come back to that place of, you say in here that the number of kids that will be served, but I'm looking for sort of more broadly, how many kids do you expect to be served within the school system with the new system that you're putting in place? You know,
So that's in the, it's in the memo. Christie is here, so you can help. It's 140, I think?
142.
142.
Can you show me where that is?
It's not total.
It's not total.
Oh, okay.
So on the last page of that brief memo, it says future brief
Oh.
program.
So that's the 44, 33, 30,
Yeah.
18, and 35, that's the 140. Compared to what we currently do, which is,
Currently, it's capacity of 48 at Bayside.
48 at Bayside, but we also have the middle school and high school classrooms, so
Correct.
those have, because we say that the total increase.
oh, I see, the net increase in total students served is the 37 is that within the BREATHE program or?
That's within the continuum of the.
Yes. Of the
So
whole
that's
thing,
not
yes.
37 additional students at Bayside, that's the combined between the Future Breathe programs, or the on-site programs at schools, as well as, reduction in the number of students that we expect to have at Bayside. Am I getting this right?
Yes,
Please?
you're right on.
Okay.
Interrupted if you see.
No, he's good.
So one of the teachers, I think, testified that there were 2 social workers for all of Riverton, and that meant created this huge caseload. How will this help that situation? Can you-
Right, so it's a little bit not related. So what the social workers do for the BREATHE program is they give access to the billing. So if we don't have those social workers to do the comp assessments, to do the ITPs every 90 days, there's no way we can access the Maine Care billing. So it's a little bit more work than
Yep.
it.
But, so the other thing that I think is important is, so there could potentially be, not potentially, there are students at Riverton today that are likely to be in one of those BREATHE classrooms at Amanda Rowe or at East End when those programs get implemented. Those students will come out of the Riverton caseload, and to the extent that those students are significant cases for social workers at Riverton, those social workers will have less, students on their caseload.
So we
We're
can serve
also-
the other 450 more completely, or I guess I'm still, if there's two social workers.
There will still be 2 social workers at Riverton. There will not be a 3rd social worker at Riverton.
Right, I think what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that some of the kids who will then enter, there will be some of the 450 that will now be in the BREATHE program that would not have been in the BREATHE program before, which will, lessen their caseload a little bit for sure, and those are probably the students that need the most attention anyway. You don't need one social worker per kid, obviously, because many of them don't need real casework. So is that kind of how, I'm just trying to understand how that will work for
That's exactly
parents.
These are the kids that need the real casework that are going to be in that READ program that the social workers can access.
Right, so the 37 are obviously the highest need that will now be in this, that we haven't been able to serve in the past. Now we're going to be able to serve those kids a little more completely, and that sort of frees up some of our social workers to, on the lower need kids, to, but I kind of get that. Was I as close as he was earlier when you said it was
You're
right on?
better.
I like her.
Don't say it.
Yeah, I like her, please.
Absolutely. Mayor, that was great.
Remember the other night, I couldn't see the person sitting over there? Well, now I can't see Jill.
On the pre-K, do you mind if I?
Go ahead.
I'll skip one. Unless somebody else has a question, I'll bring you. On the pre-K, the only question I had on the, two questions I had on the chart is, and you may have explained when you were talking about it, but in that first wraparound services, the pathway 3 with TOA also had this family stability services, and the others did not. Does that get caught up somewhere in the responsive enrollment column, or what is that?
I mean, that's, Head Start has a very elaborate a set of wraparound services that are, heavily resourced federally, and that is something that is a level of case management and family engagement that we will piece together, but not at the same level of intensity that is just naturally built into Head Start.
And on the 9 classrooms over 5 years, and my understanding as well is that after 2 years, though, there's going to be at least a plan brought forward to try to get to universal pre-K sooner. Is that part of it? Okay. Anybody else on pre-K? On the, this is a question I just heard on sharing expenses, and I've just quickly glanced through these. Do any communities do a cost share with parents in terms of a public pre-K program in which you sort of have, families that in the private market might be paying $1,000, but, you just do a decreased sort of rate, or, you know what I'm talking about?
Not if there's state funding involved. Right now, and I talked to Councilor Cook, she asked that same question today about the fact that, current pre-K, state pre-K rules say that if you're providing, if it's provided in the school and it's provided, and it's funded by them, even if it's partially funded by them, that you cannot charge. You can charge for the pieces that are wraparound. So, for example, the reason that we have that laid out as maximum exposure, as Alicia mentioned, that is the cost that would be involved if every student used before and after care and none of them paid for it, but we fully intend to have that be on a sliding scale, so the before and after care is actually in our budget is not reflected as an expenditure right now, because we expect that it will be a be a neutral cost, because of the percentage of parents that will pay for those services will offset those that we don't charge.
And that's based on ability to pay, so you do some kind of income guidelines.
Yeah, and we'll work with REC to figure out, and we've already, sort of modeled it out based on REC's current structure. So that's what we would expect to do.
Adult ed, what is the total enrollment of adult ed?
Please.
Sure, so last year, one moment please. So last year, fiscal year 18, in our ESOL and academic programming, we had 2,200 students. In total, if we add in our job skills and our enrichment classes, we had 3,883 students.
And what is your total budget?
Our last year's expenditures were total, and this is braided funding, a blend of local, state, federal, and private grants, was $2.69 million. The local expenditure accounts for about 55% of that.
So the local expenditures
1.49 million.
To serve the 3,800.
Yeah.
And can you talk at all about the families that we serve that may live in Westbrook? Why do they come to us? What's the?
I think that, I'm going to have Anya chime in too, but I think our program in general is much more robust than Westbrook's. Westbrook has just, in really the past year, developed their ESOL program and with 100 students, and we have 2,200 students taking ESOL classes and from 82 countries. And so I think that partially it's because at this point in time, the majority of our students are ESOL. And so that's the type of programming that they're looking for. And so they, I think, benefit from the breadth of services and courses that we can provide, from basic literacy all the way up to college prep. So I think that that's the primary reason. I don't know if you have any comment to add on that.
Yeah, students are also employed in Portland, so for many it's just a more convenient option. Westbrook can't possibly provide high school diploma credentials or high-tech testing, or they're just not set up yet for any of that. So a tremendous amount of the work that we do with making sure people have the credentials they need for jobs, or getting them CNA training, and that kind of work goes on with us in our building, and all the students know that. So for some, it's the most valuable place to be for a host of reasons over a very extended period of time.
Anya, can you, for those who don't know who you are, we did introductions before you came in.
Oh, sorry.
Can you just let people know who you are?
I'm Anya Hansen. I'm the academic advisor at Portland Adult Education.
We also had Axel Simon
Yes.
to join us, who is our board representative from Portland Adult Ed. So I just wanted to introduce him over.
Thank you for being here. And anybody else at the dais or staff that came in? Counselor Ray has joined us. Counselor Ali. And
Counselor Ali at large.
anybody else join us? Lady, the staff, or like?
And so, of those who are here, it sounds like those numbers have dropped. I'm curious if in Westbrook and South Portland, I know they're just getting started. Do they accept Portland students if they were working in that community as well? Or do they have anything that says they will only take their residents?
I know that according to state law, adult education programs are required to serve anyone at no cost. And so I think that if a Portland resident showed up in Westbrook and they had the capacity, they would be required to serve them.
It's also part of the hub model that we're shifting to for the Maine College and career programming, and also the high school diploma level, I think, or is it just Maine? Anyway, the whole orientation of the State Department of Ed is asking us to work better together within the county, to refer more people among programs, to just make, for all of us to better utilize the individualized services that we may be offering, so that folks in the community can all access all those services.
So that is something, yeah, we're really proactively working on that and making referrals to, if Westbrook is running a specific workforce training, that we help promote that class and we're referring people. And that really is coming down from the State Department, that they want us to think of ourselves more as a Cumberland County region of adult ed.
And of the 2,200, is there an average amount of time that a student is at adult ed?
That they're at adult ed.
It's a really hard question.
Yeah.
We have students who take a single trimester's class with us, and I've worked personally with students who've been there for their entire K through 12 education, college preparation, return for CNA. So I've been there, this is my 17th year. I have students that I worked with at Barber Foods 5 years prior, but who continually access opportunity as they're able to progress through the programming.
How many unduplicated students? Or is 2,200 unduplicated?
That's unduplicated.
That's unduplicated?
Yes.
That's 2,200 duplicated.
That are in the ESL and academic program.
Some of them may be taking multiple classes, I assume, at the same time.
It could be,
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I know that there are a couple of community-based program providers. Do you have a working relationship with any of them?
We have a lot of partnerships with community-based organizations. Were you thinking a specific type of community-based partner?
Well, those who provide similar services,
Like
because
Learning Works.
like Learning Works.
Oh,
We-
sure.
Like we, in the memo, it talks about the fact that we refer students, again, this idea of we want to make sure that folks have access. So if there's a waiting list on our end and they could benefit from, what are some of the other
Right.
providers in town? that-
So we have, we were a founding member of a ESOL collaborative that's now housed in the Office of Economic Opportunity under Julia Trujillo. And that is a network of, how many programs? Maybe 8 or 6, 8, somewhere in there. But it's, Learning Works, Hope House, Salvation Army, all these different organizations that are providing other ESOL services. And so they meet monthly and discuss the different, share resources, discuss students' opportunities for professional development. We've done some sort of informal training for other ESOL programs because we do have arguably the most well-developed or most established ESOL program, so we often have our teachers supporting other organizations. And I would say we also work very closely with the local workforce development agencies when we're developing a CNA class or a education ed tech class or a banking class. We're working with agencies that have clients that may be referred or that may be able to contribute to program support financially. We also, because it's just such a vibrant and busy place all day. I mean, we've got 1,500 people in and out of the building. We often have organizations come into Portland Adult Ed. So, for example, ILAP is often coming and giving educational workshops to students about their legal rights, or that's one example of many. But we're very aware of our. We provide a lot of service, but we're also limited, and so that we depend greatly on our partnerships in the community.
But what I was trying to find out is that you have about 35 students on the waiting list. Was it 85 in somewhere here?
Sure.
Is there any program out there that will be able to help those students? Because part of what we see is that students who are on the waiting list continuously have to seek help from the city. So if there are other service providers out there who will take these students, it will shorten the time they will prepare to go back into the workforce, and then you don't have to deal with that waiting list, and then they will be self-sufficient once they go through programs somewhere else. It speeds up the workload for everyone. Is there any? I'm just kidding.
So two of the new programs we've developed this year is in partnership with the YMCA. Because childcare is such an issue for a lot of students that want to take classes, we have 2 classes there that are now being offered. They're actually with some of our instructors, but in partnership with the Y, and so students can attend and have their children in childcare during that time. I do believe that through the ESOL collaborative, that is a topic of discussion, that they look at how can we refer students to different programs. If they can't be served at Portland Adult Ed, can they go to Salvation Army or Learning Works? Do they have space for them?
Thank you.
So I have a question on adult ed, and I certainly don't want to cause any anxiety for anyone in the room, but I'm just wondering about this, and it came up a little bit at the last meeting. I know that adult ed used to be located over at Douglas Street at the building where you had leaks in the roof and not a great facility, and you're probably in a place that you're much happier with right now. And it did come up during the Enrollment and Facilities Commission, the idea of relocating, and we briefly touched upon it last time. So I was looking at that in the budget book and looking at how much it costs to lease it and everything, and was just wondering, I understand it's not something that's probably feasible for this next fiscal year to try to make a move, but is that something that you're looking at for the future? And is there enough space in the existing system to accommodate?
There is
Okay.
no single space that
Right.
would meet their needs in our current, portfolio of schools where where Portland Adult Ed could move in its current state. So with the number of classrooms that they need, with the office space that they need, and so, we don't think that there is a place. We are renewing our lease with the Archdiocese, but we've done it for a single year so that we can continue to look at all of our options instead of doing a 5-year lease, which we had originally contemplated. So we are doing that. The other piece related to that is, as you know, it also, the Enrollment and Facilities Commission also suggested that the administration building, and we are absolutely committed to doing that over the course of the next year, so that means that we will be able to vacate the Cumberland Avenue building. We're just trying to figure out where to go, and the big variable for us is making sure that it doesn't cost us as much to move as it would cost to pay the bond payment on the current property. So that's the variable.
And I wanted to bring that up because I think there was somewhat of a feeling, because of some of the reporting around the enrollment and facilities study, that the high schools were running, the figures that were used were 50%, and it makes people think half the building's empty. And that's not what that means. And so I just wanted to kind of get at the idea
headline writers.
that you'd have to split that program into many different pieces, which obviously.
And it's actually fairly close at Portland High School, but it doesn't.
not.
And then there are other aspects of Portland High School that would make it a challenging location, including parking. I mean, that, even though Cathedral does not have ideal parking, and you guys struggle with that all the time, it has parking, and there is no equivalent to that, if we were at Portland High School. So, that's a big issue with a constant churn of people coming in and out that goes with Portland. But we are committed to looking at different options and seeing if that is a possibility.
Well, I was just going to add to your point that with 200 or 300 people coming out of the building 4 times a day, we don't have any security. We expect that flow, and it's entirely incompatible with an elementary, a middle, a high school even, to have that kind of flow and not to have security. So I think, I just wonder when we have this conversation, I just like to sort of remind people, it's not the same as a high school. And people are there on a part-time basis, not a traditional school day. So any site has to accommodate for that flow, in addition to of course, the parking issues.
And the space.
Other questions?
I have a question on a totally different subject. I don't know.
I'm good. Is it about the schools?
Yeah, no, it's still relevant, yeah. So another thing that I was just looking at was tuition to Long Island. From Cliff Island, it's like one kid, it's very limited, it's like $2,000. From Great Diamond Island, there are 4 students going at $21,340 each for $85,360, and then there's meals and stuff like that. So I was just curious as to why we send Great Diamond students to Long Island instead of Peaks, where we run a school, and I'm sure maybe there's a reason that it's done that way.
There is, and I don't exactly know what it is, but we can get you an answer on that.
Okay.
I know that we have a long-standing MOU with Long Island to take the kids from Diamond, but I'm not 100% sure if it's related to the ferry or if it's related to something else. But there is a reason.
Okay. This is not big money that's going to make huge change, but I was just looking to see if it was anything to consider.
And I do want to point out that Long Island does send their middle school, high school students to us, and we also do tuition that way. So.
Any other questions or just general comment on the budget? We're scheduled, this is before the board on Monday for a final vote. So anything that this committee wants us to feedback to the board, that would be appreciative feedback.
I mean, I think at this point, I mean, obviously, I appreciate the information here. We're going to have to take some time to go through it. You know, we get the manager's budget on Monday, and I think we'll be able to come back and have a more robust conversation after that, because that'll determine a lot, I think, for most of us, depending on how good or terrible that may or may not look on the city side of things. Other than that, I'm not sure what you're going to add at this point.
Yeah, and I'd probably second what Justin said. I think we'll see the manager's budget, and then we'll have a better idea about what the combined number is. And you know, if he's looking at, I don't know what his budget is, but if he's looking at reductions or additions or things, we just don't know at this point. So I think we'll be able to have a better conversation. I think the only, we talked about it quite a while ago, is you're built based on what we expect the governor's budget is going to be, and I think we're all optimistic. I mean, it may not look exactly like that, and not for today necessarily, but and maybe when you guys were talking about it, maybe not in detail, but what is the contingency if, you know, if it is not, if it's less than what we think, and so that'd be the only other thing I guess I would say, but you guys will have to have that conversation.
You're on the committee, you're supposed to have.
The chairs get it right. It's protocol.
I just want to say thank you for what you brought forward. I think this is, you know, really made a strong commitment to the Portland Promise, and I feel like that's, you made it clear that that's something that needs to happen, and we're being aggressive about putting it in place. I'd love to see universal pre-K go faster. I think you know that, and I've talked to you about that, so I wish that we've even had additional funds for universal pre-K, but I understand needing to sort of find a good path between both making sure it's quality and what we can afford. But I feel like overall you've done a very good job with this budget. You know, it's pretty similar to what it was last year, which we know the people of Portland supported overwhelmingly, and I think they probably would support these investments again. So I appreciate what you've done.
Well, so I wanted to add that there should also be a contingency for if we get more than expected.
Good point.
I'd love to make sure that we know how we're going to handle that. And then I just wanted to add a thank you. I think the process has gone very smoothly to date this year, and I really appreciate the great thought and care that you have put into preparing this, and looking to maximize the benefits that you can get while also being very cognizant of the fact that we're all struggling with taxes and funding. Hopefully, the new administration is going to start moving us in a good direction so that we're not going to be struggling quite so much in the future. Thank you.
And I mean, echo the thanks that have been given. I think, you know, the process has been, you know, as we've talked about before, but the information has been very thorough, and thank you for this detailed information that we'll look at more closely. So I failed to express my gratitude for the work.
You're so polite.
Now, enjoy my coffee.
Javier, Alicia, anything? Okay. All right.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. Thank you, guys.